Performance advisory service for small multi-family real estate investors. I'm Lee Wood. In each show, I share with you lessons I've learned from my friends, mentors, and personal journey in real estate. I've designed each show to inspire you, motivate you, and equip you on your own investing path. In today's show, I'm going to cover how to communicate to build your real estate nation. And remember, if you're watching this live, you can drop some comments in the whatever social media platform you're watching this on, and I'll address as many as I can throughout the show. If you can do me a favor, head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the show. That would be fantastic. And don't forget to go to www.nathanbushmba.com for free resources to help you grow your real estate business. Look, do you want to grow your real estate nation even faster than ever before? The secret isn't just in the deals. It's how you communicate. Today, we're going to discover some strategies top investors use to attract partners, vendors, team members, close more deals, and build a thriving real estate nation. You can start now and transform your network into unstoppable growth. I got Jason with me today. I'm excited to have you with me. What's up, Jason? How are you?
Doing good, Nathan. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Jason, so they know who you are and why you're on my show with me, how we work together.
All right. So I'm Jason Hudson. I run a construction company. Nathan partners with me a little bit on that and helps me out with several things there. We've known each other for, well, we kind of figured it's been probably close to 30 years, I'd say. We're old, so 30 years now. But yeah, so. But I run a construction company. We specialize in property management. We specialize in the turnovers, the make-readies. We do a lot of house flipping, home remodels, all sorts of stuff along those lines. If it's old and broken, I love fixing it. So that's what we do.
That's awesome, Jason. I want to dive right into this topic of communication. Communication is so important, and I've known you our communication's probably better than most just because of how long we've been in a relationship and have known each other. But what is communication? Let's start with like the very basics. What do you consider communication? What is it?
So communication, I think a lot of times communication is misunderstood. It tends to be one-sided. I am communicating with you by telling you what I want and how I want it and when I want it and where I want it. And that is not communication. Communication is a two-way street. Communication actually, in my personal opinion, communication is more listening than it is talking. Learning to listen and actually hearing what people are saying, so you know how to give them the best piece that they can have of you and the best piece of themselves. Sometimes people communicate in ways that they're asking the question they don't realize they're asking, or they're looking for something they don't realize they're looking for. And I can give you tons of examples of what I mean by that. But to me, communication is probably more 80% listening and 20% talking.
Yeah. This isn't a gotcha question, but I do have a question that I think would be good for the audience. What's the stupidest thing you've ever said to somebody? Like, professionally, what's the stupidest thing you ever said? Don't go personal. That's really crazy.
So early on in business, I would make statements like, no, you really don't want this. You don't realize it, but you don't like this. This is not going to be good for you. And immediately what that would do is turn people completely off. They would see it and they'd go, oh, you think you know what I want? And so I would make those huge mistakes at the beginning. Instead of listening to them, I would just say, oh, no, this is the way it goes. This is how it should be. And I remember one person that I looked at and I said, I told him, I said, no, you need to do it this way, and this way. And that's the best way. And I gave them the bid. And then I walked away thinking, man, I got this job. And I didn't hear anything for a couple of days. And I called them up and said, hey, you still interested? We can move forward. And they're like, no, you were very rude to us. And I went, I wasn't rude. They said, you tried telling us what we wanted. Well, no, I was telling you what was best. I didn't realize communication at that time and really mess that up.
Yeah, stupidest thing I ever said to somebody professionally was I quit. Taking some time to think about it. So once you say the I quit statement, I mean, it's pretty much over from that point going forward. There's no more
Right.
relationship. There's no more anything that's going to take place. You better navigate those things a lot better than just I quit, even if it's a vendor, partner, whatever relationship. I think that's incredibly important lesson I've learned from the past. So I want to talk a little bit about communication, but I couldn't talk about communication if I didn't talk about connecting. One of the superpowers that I feel you had, and why I thought it would be important to have you on this show, is the importance of connecting with others. Number one, what is connecting? And number two, how important is it in communication?
So connecting is to me is just you got to get your face out there in front of people, but not just it's not about what can I get from the person, it's what can I give to the person. That's what creates the connection, right? So think about it when you're, if you're pursuing that girlfriend or boyfriend, you want to connect with them. You research who they are, you study them, and you figure out their likes and dislikes in order to give them something that they're going to enjoy, something they're going to like. That creates the connection between you and them because you are giving them something for nothing in order to gain the relationship. So so when you go out and you're looking at trying to connect with new people, you're looking at how can I serve you, right? The best leader is a servant. And so, how can I serve you in your needs? How can I serve you with where you're at? What are your interests, your likes, your wants, your desires? And then let me come at you with how I can help you with that. And that creates that kind of connection. But you've got to be able to be kind of outgoing and willing to take those risks and willing to step out.
Yeah, Jason, this gentleman Jay Hall a number of years ago, he was the owner of a consulting firm, Teleometrics, and he studied the performance of 16,000 executives. And here's what he found: high achievers, they cared about people and profits, not just profits. They were optimistic about their team. They sought advice from their team, and they were better listeners than anyone else in the company. They found that average achievers concentrated on production, focused on their own status. They were cautious about the advice that they would listen to and receive from their internal surroundings, and they only listened to people who were superior to them. And then low achievers care about their own security. They distrusted their team. They didn't ask for advice. They avoided communication, and they relied on a policy manual versus a person. With that said, you're growing a real estate construction company. I'm sure you're a high achiever. How have you implemented this strategy of high achievement within the construction company that you lead right now?
So I have a philosophy that I have used my entire life, and especially when I started my business. I don't own a construction company. I own a people business. So when it comes to, the idea of hiring the right people, I don't look at people for their skill set as much as I look for people with the right attitudes and the right mentality. Because I could teach skill set, but when you have people that care about other people, when you have people that, for instance, I've got a gentleman who's been with me over a year now, and we were doing a shower remodel for a lady, and she had to use her bathroom downstairs, and she's 80 years old. And while we were doing this bathroom and shower remodel, she had to go downstairs to use the restroom while the guys were working. And she just happened to be down there a little longer than what my guys thought that she should have. And so they went downstairs and they were asking her if she was okay. And she had just stayed down there to do a few things, but they were really concerned about her. And so when you really put people first, it makes an impact. And so when you have a team that thinks about everybody else on the team and not just their own, hey, I want to get this done because I want to get paid more, or I want to get this done, or I want to do this or that because, hey, it gets me more in my pocket, or even the opposite effect of, I don't want to move forward because, I'm getting paid by the hour, so who cares? Those things create negative environments. And so what I try to instill in my guys, and I think this really resonates with why we've grown so much, is I am always on the phone asking my guys how they are. Then I ask them how their families are. I talk to them about, I've got a guy that his daughter's in swim, and I call him up and say, hey, how'd she do on the meet that you were talking about yesterday? And the fact is, I don't remember all these things. I have to write them down. I can't remember everybody, but I write them down because I care and I want to, show them that I do care. And so I make it a point to write these things down so that when I talk to them the next time, I can bring those things up, not just because I'm trying to smooth talk or anything. I really want them to be successful, not just in my company, but in life. So some of them I give little incentives to help them boost their personal growth, not so much the business growth, but how can I make you a better person? What can I do to serve you to help you become better in whatever it is you like? And I push that towards my guys. And if I've got any guys that give me some headbutts or pushbacks, or they don't want to go that direction, they won't be with me very long because they go against the grain of my business, which is people.
Yeah. What you were talking about, Jason, reminds me so much of the quote from Zig Ziglar, and I think John Maxwell eventually commandeered it. But he said, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." And John Maxwell actually summarizes that in one of his books by explaining that the biggest mistake he made when he was younger was trying to get ahead by correcting others when he should have been trying to connect with others.
Correct.
I felt like that was such a powerful statement when I read it. He didn't try to get ahead by correcting others. When he did that, he failed. He got ahead. He finally succeeded when he learned the importance of connecting. And what you're talking about, caring about others, connecting with others, those are things that you have to implement within your business or the business will fail.
Exactly.
And speaking of failure, there's problems that come up. There's challenges that we're going to face. We're going to have troubles. We're going to have these things. And so we're talking about communication today, and it could sound like I'm talking just like painting a rosy picture about just la la land, but then there's real world things. There's investors, there's goals, there's things that have to be met within business. And so how do you deal with trouble when trouble comes in? How do you deal with challenges?
That's actually a really good question. No matter what challenges arise. So there's an old saying that says, act like a duck and let it roll off your back. That's a whole lot easier said than done for starters. I don't care who you are, but there's a lot of truth in that at the same time. It's one of the hardest things for me because I connect with people in such a way that I become very personal with them. So any negative, and I don't care if it's a customer, a client, a team member, when I connect with them, I connect with them deep. So when they have something they bring to me that's wrong or they don't like, I take it personal. I tend to want to take it personal, like I'm the failure, or this is a mess up, and then I try to get on the defensive. And I've had to learn that when those troubles and those trials arise, take that step into their place, into who they are. So I have a saying now that I use with every customer when they come back and they go, oh, can we fix this and this and this? I didn't like the way they were. Hey, this is 100% your house and you get to have what you want. So I'm here to give you what you want and what you're looking for. So how can I help? Right. And so when I take that approach, then it gets me off the defense, like, oh, my guy's messed up. I can't believe this. And it puts me into their shoes of they're just asking for something that they thought was going to be a part of this. And it's my job to do the best I can to give them what they were asking for, because this is what we agreed to. And so then there are times, and to take another pivot, there are times where, hey, maybe slowdowns happen in business. And what if I have to lay off, or what if I have to ask some guys to take a few days off because I don't have work for them? I have created such a relationship with my guys that's a hard place for me to be. And that's a hard place for me to put myself into. And so when those challenges arise, the only way to combat those is pure, genuine communication with them, being open and straight, and then asking their input, their ideas, their thoughts, and working with them in that regard. And that works across the board, client to team member, is constant, clear communication. Don't beat around the bush, but don't slap them in the face with it either. You got to be straight, but you've got to be gentle, right? The scriptures say, "Be wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove." Being gentle with what you're going to give, but at the same time, give it straight and in the way that you would want to receive that.
Yeah, you know, I think the hardest part for me has been in business, just in general, when I have team members that I work with, and I do have to offer some type of feedback or correction to them, and it really can be challenging because I don't want somebody to take the feedback that I'm giving them personally. Like, hey, we need to do this differently. We need to paint this a different color for your perspective. Or if I'm working on a web funnel or a website for somebody, like, hey, this is what I would change up in order to make this look professional and complete. We need to finish this project, right? So I don't want to give feedback to somebody in a way that's detrimental or that will hurt them in their psyche, because I want to empower them and uplift them and add value to their life. So, how do you approach that conversation when there is a problem and there's an issue so that you're not correcting, you're connecting in that process?
That's another good question. I've had to do that a couple times recently, actually. So when it's kind of like with children, whenever I'm not, and I don't want to say my team is children. That's not what I mean by that. But I've raised 5 children, still raising. And one of the things I learned is you don't discipline out of anger. You allow yourself to calm down, take time to look at it. You don't ever react in the moment. You take time to actually sit back and think about all of what happened. And one of the things that I've recently been reading this book. Oh, now I'm going to forget the name of the book, but anyway, Jocko, whatever his name is, I can't even remember
Extreme
his name now. But
ownership,
anyway, Extreme
Jocko
Ownership. There
Will's
you go.
extreme ownership.
Thank you. And so I've been reading that book, and I've before even reading that book, I had been trying to put some of the things he talks about in practice. Okay, so when I look at having to give a feedback along those lines, I have to look at, okay, first, where did I fail? Where was my mess up first? And and the way I look at it is there's not a it wasn't me answer. There is never that answer. I am the leader and I did do a failure. That failure might be I hired the wrong person, or that failure might be I didn't communicate well. But there's a failure somewhere in my end first. When I see my failure first, I can approach the person I'm talking to in a much better tone, because it's not you're the only one at fault. It is, hey, there's been a mistake across the board here. Let's start working towards fixing that mistake. And then I could come to them a lot gentler with the approach, at the same time still being stern and straight.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You know, it brings me to this thought process. There's a book. It's kind of tangential, but it also, I think it applies to the same situation. It's called The Power of Optimism. It's by Alan Lloyd McGinnis. He also wrote Bringing Out the Best in People and Forward Faster and a number of other different books. He was a psychiatrist, and he studied a lot of stuff through like his practice, and then wrote about that and how to be more optimistic, how to be a better leader, those types of things. And in his book, The Power of Optimism, he had 6 strategies for dealing with trouble. The first strategy was to think of yourself and I want to include this to your team. Think of them as problem solvers, right? So there's an issue, there's trouble, there's a challenge. It's not them that's a challenge. There's an issue that's a challenge. There's a problem that's a challenge. So think of yourself, your team members together as a problem solver. Then brainstorm multiple options. Don't allow the trouble to be pigeonhole you into only one solution, because maybe your solution in that moment is the wrong solution. So you have this thought, okay, we're now problem solvers. We're working on this problem together. We have multiple options. But then you also have to, so that you can keep that positive mindset, you have to anticipate that there's going to be problems ahead of time to begin with. So you're problem solvers, you're working through multiple different options, you're anticipating different problems ahead of time. And then when the problem arises, it should be a safe place in your organization environment amongst your team members to talk freely about negative feelings. So be a problem solver, multiple options, anticipate problems, and then don't be afraid to talk freely about negative feelings. I don't know how many times, Jason, over our career and friendship together that I've picked up the phone and called you and talked through negative feelings exactly as I was having them, whether they were about our relationship, me, the environment that I'm in, other relationships that I'm trying to work through challenges with. But we have that friendship where we can talk freely about negative feelings that we're having. And then we always do this, and this is also one of the steps in the book, which is to look for the good in a bad situation. Every single trouble brings with it its counterpart. There's no such thing as a one-sided piece of bread. There's no such thing as a one-sided piece of paper, and there's no such thing as a one-sided issue. It is a problem and an opportunity at the same time. So there's always good and bad, but you can't have phony pep talks, right? Like
Right.
sometimes things that you're going through are just bad. So you got to realize there is the positive side of it, but you can't be just making up phony pep talks about things. So I thought that those 6 steps, even though they were tangential to what we were talking about, when you have a challenge with a team member, if you include them in that optimistic viewpoint, I think that you're approaching it. My wonderful wife always says to me, assume positive intent, right? If you can go into a situation always looking to see that nobody goes into work trying to create problems and issues and they want to do a good job, if you can start from the premise of assuming positive intent, then you can seek to understand in that situation and look for those multiple options that are available. But if you go in, like you said, mad, angry, frustrated, upset in a situation, the outcome of that I have never found to be successful. How about you?
Never. It has never worked out.
No, no. All right. So we've talked a lot about communicating just in general, but there's a specific type of communication that I think is imperative before you even communicate with others, and that's communicating with yourself. The first type of negative communication that people experience, and I watch them do this all the time, they are telling stories or sharing stories, but the only stories they can ever think of in family members or friend situations are the negative ones. I'm always thinking to myself, can you just tell more positive stories, please? I find that to be the first problem that people have with even self-talk is that they go around sharing these negative stories. What have you done, Jason, over your lifetime in your business to be able to share more positive?
Well, in order to be able to share more positive, you have to be able to think more positive. I know when I first started my business and I started trying to grow the business, it was for the, you're talking about self talk. It was, Jason, you're not good enough. Jason, you'll never make it. Jason, you don't know enough. Jason, this is crazy. You're out of your mind. And it was a constant. And all of a sudden, things still started working, and I didn't understand why, even to this day. But things started working, and then it was like I feel like the imposter. I feel like people are going to look at me funny, and they're going to realize that I don't have it all together. And one day I was reading a book by Jim Rohn. Actually, it's still my favorite book, and it's probably the fifth time I read it. But it was the 12 Pillars, and I was reading that book again, and as I was reading it, I realized the main character in that book, he had a lot of negative self-talk that slowed him down and actually caused him some struggles. And it's subtle, but it's there. And so I thought, you know what, Jason, you're gonna start. I don't want to do one of these little goofy, hey, let's put stickers on my mirror and say, oh, you're great today. Oh, you're a beautiful guy. And I don't want to make the falsehood, but I want to actually look at what I'm doing that is right instead of looking at what I think is wrong. I want to look at what is actually right. And it made me think of a story. Whenever I was younger, I was 14, and I was working in my with my uncle. We were baling hay one summer, and I was driving his little Isuzu pickup truck with a little trailer and some wood in the back, and we had just a few bales of hay in the back of that trailer this one day, and so we dropped the trailer off, and then we're going to drop off the load of wood, and this Isuzu was a stick shift, and I'm 14, and I remember my uncle says, "All right, now back that thing up to the shed." I said, "Okay," and started backing it up, and he says, "Whoa." Well, whoa, I go to put my foot on the brake and I put my left foot on the clutch and push down. Whoa wasn't happening. So I pushed harder, like it was going to do something, and whoa wasn't happening. And he's hollering, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I slammed right into the shed. And when I finally realized I had the wrong foot on the wrong pedal, he had come up to the window, and I will paraphrase, but he looked at me and he said something that I've never forgotten. And he wasn't mean or he wasn't angry, but he said, Jason, I want you to remember one thing. One crud takes care of a whole lot of that, boys. And he walked away. And I thought about that for days and weeks and months. And I come to the conclusion what he was saying is often your one mistake covers up all the good things you've done to other people. So knowing that, you have to understand that people dwell on the negative. They focus on the negative and they make that the prominent. And so I decided in my life that I was going to try to work on being more positive and seeing the good in people before I saw the bad in people. Because I wasn't a bad guy, even though I ran into the shed. It wasn't intentional. And I'd done so much good all summer. I didn't want that to be my legacy for the summer, just the same as in my life. I'm going to make mistakes, and I don't want people to look at them as that's who I am. And so when I look at that and I think about the guys that work under me and the people I go to and deal with on a regular basis, whether they're vendors or customers or clients or team members, I want to see the positive because I don't want their legacy to be negative in my mind. And the challenge is, going back to what you had asked originally, is making sure I don't look at the negative in myself too. Look at the positives in myself so that I don't become the person that focuses on the negative and that's all I get to see.
One of the challenges I find difficult in this, and I'm sure a lot of the audience members, I'm sure you guys feel the exact same way. JC, I see you out there. Dave, I appreciate you tuning into the show. One of the challenges that I see is that how do you tell positive stories while remaining humble? You don't want to be this braggadocious, blowhard, puffering, running around saying that you're the greatest like Muhammad Ali. Nobody likes that person. You can't connect with other people when that's you. So how do you tell yourself these positive stories and demonstrate humility on a regular basis?
Ooh, now there's a good question there. The truth is, for me, I have to talk to myself and tell myself the good things I'm doing in the midst of a bad thing that I've done, which keeps me humble, right? So I've just made a terrible mistake doing something at work or messing up a bid or a job or didn't bid something right. And in the midst of that moment, that's when I have to tell myself that story of what did you do good? Because it gets me in perspective. Yeah, I did make this mistake, but now I got to tell myself about the good. Now, when you're talking to other people, you have to be able to tell the bad story with the good without making yourself miserable because you're only talking about the bad, but also without telling all the good only all the time. So, and I take this example out of scripture because in the book of Revelation, chapters 2 and 3, there's all these letters to the churches. And Jesus is writing these letters. And in each one of the letters, he does what I call a sandwich. He tells them something really good that they did. Then he tells them where they need to fix some mistakes. And then he brings back a good again. Let them know, hey, just because you got these mistakes doesn't mean you're all bad. So here's some more good. And so to try to do that in my life is create this humble sandwich is what I call it. There's rough times and there's hard times in life that we're all going to face and mistakes we're all going to make. But to be able to say the good stuff mixed in with the bad stuff will keep that. I believe it keeps you humble and it keeps you where you need to be. And so sometimes when I'm talking to somebody who's consistently talking about all the failures, all the mistakes, all the hardships, I take time out to tell them all the good things I see, to tell them all the good things that I've noticed, to make sure they understand that there is still good. Yes, you're going through a hard time, but they're still good. And that good doesn't make them swell up in their head because I'm not just trying to pump out all nothing but good, but that good will help them reflect on what they've actually got going on. Then I'll say, you're right. These are some struggles, but remember, here's some more good, right? So I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm not beating around the bush. I'm still being straight, but at the same time, I'm giving them that that humble sandwich to help them see where the good is in life, where the bad is in life, and how to bring those things together to make something great. I've often said that the biggest enemy of goodness is, I mean, of greatness is goodness. We settle for the good when we could be great, and so we tell ourselves what we want to hear just so we can settle for the good. But the great is to bring in the things we don't want to hear in the midst of the things we want to hear, and that helps us become great.
Yeah, if you're a small multifamily real estate investor and you're tuning in right now and you're just starting to understand, oh, they're talking about communication, but it's this kind of relational, care about people thought process, and why is that so impactful to my business? I'm going to share with you some stuff about communicating with your team and your vendors in just 1 second. And those vendors are also partners, investors, executive board members, whoever it happens to be that you're trying to communicate with. Communication, each step that we've talked about so far, and we started off talking about the importance of communicating, connecting, doing these things in a right, humble way. Then we talked a little bit more about, the way to deal with trouble, and then also the way to deal with the things that we say to ourselves. There's two more things I'm going to share with you about talking to yourself that we need to discuss. If you're a multifamily real estate investor and you're like, yeah, Nathan, but how do I talk to a board executive? How do I talk to an investor? Guys, keep in mind, how you treat anybody is how you treat everybody. And so these relational conversations, even though they're building on each other to get to the point where you can talk and have those conversations, I'm going to share with you on how to have a conversation in an investor boardroom and those types of things. The basic principles of communication that Jason has been sharing with you, that we have been talking about on and discussing on the show, guys, these are the critical things that separate the top investors from the ones who get to the top and then fail, the ones who step on others to get ahead. And so we just believe things differently in the Red Maples world. We believe that you treat others the way you want to be treated. We believe that you lead with care and kindness and compassion. And sometimes kindness and compassion, go watch my entire video on collecting rent with love. Sometimes kindness and compassion is holding people accountable to policies and procedures, but it starts with the care about that other human being. And so the first person that you have to learn to care about is yourself. And I know it's difficult. It's difficult when you go through life and you're told you have to be humble, you need to remain humble, and you're trying to combat or compare that to, well, then how do I feel successful and how do I have this sense of certainty? Confidence is completely different, in self-worth are completely different than false sense of egos that you puff yourself up with. And so whether you have 30,000 units or you're buying your first rental property, don't get so conflated that just because you've been blessed to the portion of having 30,000 units, that you're somehow better than the person who's starting off who has 1 unit. And if you do that, if you remain humble through the process, what you'll find is you'll avoid these other two negative self-talks. The first one being worry. Jason, how much can worry hurt somebody's internal dialogue?
Oh, it's devastating. Um, it'll cause you to want to quit. It'll cause you to want to give up. It'll cause you to make bad decisions because you think you can't do the right thing. And so when you worry about things too much, and don't get me wrong, it's not that you don't have anxiety pieces especially as a business owner or an entrepreneur. You have those moments where you're going, how am I going to pay the next bill? Or what are we going to do next? How are we going to handle this? Or it's an overwhelming thought. But if you allow yourself to worry so much, you'll start spiraling out of control. I can only speak on that from experience. You'll spiral out of control with worries and doubts and fears to the point where every decision you make is based on a fear or a worry or a doubting in yourself. And that is never a good decision to make, because that decision that you make in that moment, it tends to wreck the things that you're trying to build and grow. And it could be something even in your own personal life, just as simple as, I remember I just created my business and I had a truck that broke down and I was desperate for another one. I needed it. And I went out and I bought a truck without really doing my due diligence, because I was worried if I didn't have the truck, I wouldn't get the work. Right. And I went out and I bought this truck And I'm not joking, it didn't even last me 2 months because I didn't do my due
Oh
diligence.
man.
Now I'm in a worse situation than I was in the first go around. Had I taken the time and not worried about the what ifs and taken the time to do rational thinking, and sometimes we get so busy that we think, oh, we got to keep going, do. Eventually it'll work out. No, you need time to actually think about things, especially when you're in a state of worry or panic or stress. Because making a decision without actually thinking about it, it will put you into a spiral. It'll cause you to get so overwhelmed you'll want to walk away. And that's not a good place to be at all.
Yeah. Have you ever worried about something so much that was actually cheap, but you thought it was going to be really expensive?
Yes. So in life, you we'll go to the perfect example of that. I worried so much about my wedding. Okay. I couldn't sleep. I thought this is gonna be a disaster, right? Everything's gonna fall apart. I gotta pay for this. And I don't know what we're gonna do. And it ended up when it was all said and done, it was the perfect wedding. My wife loved it. It did not any cost us anywhere near what we thought it was going to. And it ended up going a whole lot smoother than planned. And when we walked away from that, I was relieved. But before that, it was so much stress and anxiety that it almost made me want to walk away from the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with because I was so scared of all of the things that could go wrong. And I'm glad that I didn't walk away from that one, but that's the paralyzation of fear.
Yeah, we had this sewage lift at our house that went out, and while it was expensive, it wasn't nearly as expensive as it could have been. I thought they were going to have to tear up the street and dig down 12 feet and all this stuff in order to make this repair that they needed to make. And while it did end up costing a little bit of money, it wasn't near the bill that I thought I was going to get. And I did. I lost sleep over it. I felt dumb about it. I felt like I should have been able to do something about it. And that ultimately I was sharing with other people that they weren't necessarily than it did better. And so I just always the worry concept always bothers me because typically people worry about three things, right? Somebody, something, or some amount. And so you gotta, if it's somebody, something, or some amount, and it's in your mind that you have some type of negative consequence that's going to happen, that's worry. And so we have to learn to go back through the 6 steps we talked about earlier and work through those challenges. The last thing that we communicate to ourselves in a way that we communicate to ourselves that really hurts and can keep us from having the success that we're looking for is this thought process of catastrophizing. Now, I know that Jason has bounced out of this meeting. I think that the internet connection has been a little bit shaky today for everybody, especially with all the heavy snows and stuff that we've had. Let's see if he can log back in. But this concept of catastrophizing, when words like we use words like always or never, these things can tend to derail us and really put us into a sense of worry and tell these negative stories. Always and never are words that I do my absolute best to stay away from. Have you found that anytime people are using the words always and never with you, or you're using the words always and never with yourself, it ultimately leads to this sense of negativity? What's your thoughts, Jason? You make it back?
Can you hear me?
Looks, I can hear you.
Oh,
So, yes, always
sorry.
and
Can
never.
can
So
you
I don't
ask
know if
that
you've got
question one more
volume.
time? It did goof up on me.
Yeah, no worries. So we're talking about catastrophizing. Catastrophizing leads to worry, which leads to these negative stories that we tell ourselves. Always and never. These two words, they they can ruin people pretty quickly, can't they?
Yes, they can. Anytime you use the words always or never, you never think outside the box. And when you're not thinking outside the box, you're putting everything in a box, and life doesn't fit in a box. So when you're using those always and never words, you are limiting yourself and limiting your environment to a point where you you end up no longer dreaming, I guess would be the best way to work that. And so when you're not dreaming, you can't communicate well with people because you're not dreaming about. There's no vision, there's no direction, there's no nothing for you to have hope in when always and never are the words that you're using. And even in the concept of always, oh, it's gonna be great, everything's gonna work out wonderful, it's always gonna be the best. And when it doesn't, then devastation hits because you were expecting one way without thinking that there could be another way. And so you were inside a box and not outside the box, and not allowing yourself to actually dream of all the possibilities and all the things.
When you stop dreaming, you start dramatizing, guys. That's the way I put
Absolutely.
it. Always and never are drama words to me. When I hear always and never that come from anybody, especially like my child, and oh, you always or you never, I'm like, oh, here comes the drama. Like, you got to get away from this concept of always and never. Now, the good thing is that my daughter has gotten really good over the years of understanding that always and never lead to drama. And so, if you can eliminate these two things from your vocabulary, look, there's only two words that I'm asking you to eliminate from your communication, or to at least be really selective in choosing to use these words. And those two words are always and never. And that's because they lead to drama. And if there's anything that I know in my life, I don't want to be around any sense of drama. Pastor in my church said, conflict happens, drama's a choice, because we're catastrophizing. Oh man. So we've talked about a lot, man. We've gone through the whole concept of how we talk to ourselves, communicating with a lot of, anybody in individually, the importance of communication. Now I want to get a little bit more practical for those that are multifamily investors who are, yeah, but I joined this because I want to know how to communicate better with my team, the team of people in my inner circle, my core people. And I know that there's a lot of things that we can communicate to our teams, but the most important thing I have found to communicate to create the culture that I want within my team and my inner circle is my core values. How do you, Jason, utilize core values in your everyday communication with team members?
So that is just non-negotiable. It's your core values are who you are, and they're not they're not optional. It's we need to make sure that we are all working together under those core values because that's what brings synergy. And so I've got personal core values for my family, and those things, blend in with the business, they blend in with everyday life. But those core values brings us, me and whoever else together as a unity, and it allows us to work together for the same goal, same direction. That's why it's called core. It's who we are at the center, right? Kindness, gentleness, love, all those different things. We talk about the fruits of the spirit in scripture, right? These are the core values of Christ. These are the core values of the word of God. And so each one of us need to have core values, whether it's within your business, whether it's within your home, whether it's within your friendship, that dictate who we are and the people around us of who we want around us, and the direction that we're flowing is all in unison together. It's vital to growth. It's vital to the visions and the dreams. We all dream the same together, and we all have the same vision together, and we get to grow together. And that's when the true phrase of a rising tide raises all ships really comes in. You've got to stay true to that core. It's non-negotiable.
I say principles are forever, values change over time, right? And the reason I say that is because I use values to help frame a culture, but the principles are consistent amongst every single thing that I do. And those principles come out of one book, they come out of the Bible, that's where I get them from. And they're non negotiable principles. And then if you can shape the systems around you based upon core values, then you can point to those values with other people and help them better understand why you do certain things. For instance, at Red Maples, we do the right thing, which is a core value of who we are as an organization. So if something's messed up, it doesn't matter how big of a mistake it was, we're going to do the right thing and make it right. I think the same is true, though. That comes from the core principle of the Ten Commandments, that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not put any God before thee. The principle is you follow the Ten Commandments. That's the principle. That's going to be the same nowadays forever. And how we do the right thing is following that principle. But the core value helps us to be able to shape the team. We say we do the right thing, and then it makes it easy to have that conversation. We do the right thing. So that's just one of the core values. Another core value of Red Maples is no slumlords, only real estate investors, right? We don't work with slumlords. We don't work with people who do things on the cheap. We only work with people who are true real estate investors who take their business seriously and they're not trying to injure other people. Where does the core value come from? Well, Jesus calls the greatest commandment to love the God with all the heart, but then also to love your neighbor as yourself, to love others, and go serve others and be a light to others. And so you can't be a slumlord and love other people. It's an impossibility. It's an impossibility. And so the principle of no real estate, slumlords versus real estate investors, that's the principle that we live off of. But the core value is the real estate investor versus the slumlord. And then we can shape our team around it. We can explain it to people that we don't want to hurt people. We won't want to injure people, and that's where it comes from. So most people will do anything, though, to live up to the faith you have in it. We're talking about working with teams, and small multifamily real estate investors are eventually going to have a team that they work with, of core inner circle members. And so this principle is people will do anything to live up to the faith you have. How have you seen this principle play out, Jason, in your business?
So I'll go back to a specific team member that I have that he started with me. He had some insecurities, a little nervous, a little scared. He wasn't going to do things right, or he was worried about messing up. And all I would do is I would go on all the things he did right and go, look at that, man. I knew you knew how to do it. And just talk him up and give him encouragement, and not fluff talk. I don't mean that, but I know it come out that way a little bit, but I would talk him up in the good things he did. When he would make a mistake, I go, I said, well, what did you learn from it? And we talk about that. And then I go, all right, great. Next time you've got this. He goes, but next time, aren't you going to be with me? I said, no, I think you've got this one. You explained to me what you did wrong and how to do it next. And I build that confidence up in them by giving them chances. Now that gentleman is out doing the exact same thing to other guys, and he's been phenomenal. And he picked up the pieces that I had instilled in him, and then now he's instilling it in others. And that's the coolest thing to watch. It's kind of the creation that you created is now creating others, and that's really neat. But it's about building people up. Now, it doesn't mean I don't tell him when he's done something wrong, but it's how I tell him to keep his confidence. It's all about how you do it and the way you do it. And that, you don't want to belittle somebody who, is capable and able. You want to build them and grow them up. So how you communicate with them will either build them or break them.
Yeah. Alejandro, I appreciate you watching online today. We're talking today about communication and how small multifamily real estate investors can communicate. Ultimately, that's what they're going to be doing. If you're an investor, what you do in retirement is going to be communicating with people. That's the way that it works. And so I've worked with a number of retired real estate investors that their full-time aspect of their life is communicating with other individuals. And so that's why we're talking about this today, is how do we communicate? Appreciate you watching online, Alejandro. So we're talking right now about communicating with teams. And I made the comment, most people would do anything to live up to your faith in them. Jason explained some stories about how he builds faith in his team members so that they can live up to that faith. Where I have the opportunity to grow as a person in this thought process is is that so oftentimes the the comment that keeps coming to my brain as I'm stumbling through this is I'm trying to figure out how to say it is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room, right? Hire people that are smarter than you and let them be the ones to do great work, and then you just encourage them and incentivize them to do greatness, right? Like you don't have to be the person that knows how to do everything. When you see people as great as what they do, they will often live into that greatness that you hold them to because they don't want to wreck the relational currency that they have with you or value they have with you in the way that you see them. People don't want to step on it. They want to continue. Look, have you ever met somebody and you're like, oh, that's the smart guy? And then every time that guy's around, he's the smart guy, right? Well, I don't want to be that smart guy, but if I meet 300 smart guys every time I'm around everybody, guess what? They're the smart guy. And I get to go into a room with 300 other smart guys. Like that's the way that this principle works and why it's so effective. And I think that this comes from listening to others and seeing the strengths that they have and encouraging and bringing out their strengths. If you can bring out the strengths, like Alan McGinnis's book, Bring Out the Best in People, if you can bring out their strengths and bring those to the surface, they will get stronger at the things they're already been blessed with and given. What do you do, Jason, to listen to your team for those strengths?
So when it comes to that, it's not just listening with your ears, it's listening with your eyes. And so I watch, I kind of do some people watching, if you will. I listen to what they're asking, even if they're not asking what they're really asking for. So, and again, one of the stories I have is I had a gentleman that came in to our job recently into the company, and he started out and his mentality was, oh, you're going to be just like every other business. You're not going to really listen. You're not going to really care, right? And that it tends to be typical for your corporate America. They don't really listen to their team members. They might send out surveys once in a while, but they don't do nothing with them. And how many of them actually get down into the trenches with them to see what they're doing, to be able to listen to them through what they're doing? And so I would get out with this gentleman, and I do this with all of them, but this specific one I'm thinking of, I'd get out with him and I'd watch him work and I'd listen to him and he'd talk about different things, and I'd find where the struggles were, or where I would see subtle hints without him actually coming out. And then I would go back to my business partner. I got a business partner in all this, and we would talk about, okay, what can we implement and what can we do to eliminate some of these stresses that they might have that we didn't realize was really a trouble or challenge. And then we'd talk it out and we'd come up with an idea and a plan, and then we'd implement that plan. And then we did that a few different times. And then this gentleman, he's come to sit down with us for his 90 days. And he says, you guys really do what you say you're going to do. You truly listen to us and hear what it is that we're asking for. And I can't see myself going anywhere else but here. And so, there's a old saying talks about the golden handcuffs, right? And most of the time they use those words as the golden handcuffs is the money and the monetary piece and the financial piece or the insurances or whatever else, this big old package. I believe that the golden handcuffs, and again, that's terrible wording, has more to do with how you treat your teams. I may not be able to pay you twice what the market is, but I can at least give you an ear and let you know you're heard. And then you go, hey, I'll never get this anywhere else. And they really do care about us, and they really do want to succeed with us. And so therefore, I'm going to stick this thing out. Now, my hope and my plan, and I tell all of them this because I believe it, my hope and my plan is one day they're going to come up to me and say, Jason, I'm going to go out on my own and I'm going to create a business. I've seen what you do and I see how you are. And I want to become like that. And I would love for you to mentor me and guide me, but I'm going to go try this myself. Great. Because now I get to create more entrepreneurs for the world I live in. And I get to watch somebody really make something great for themselves. I don't have to have them with me for the rest of their lives because I just need a person on staff. I want them to become the best version of themselves they can be. And then they hold me accountable to be the best version of myself I can be by what they say when I'm out there and I'm listening to them, whether it's watching them or actually hearing them with my ears. I get to become the best version of me. And so, what I look at it when you said the smartest one in the room, when I get in the room with my guys, I go into that room going, I'm the dumb one here. What can I learn? Because that's how my team grows together, and that's how my business will grow. Is every room I step in is I'm the dumb one. What can I learn? And when we get past that, where we think, oh, I'm the smartest guy in the room, it's not always necessarily you're in the wrong room. You're in the wrong mindset for the room. Because if you're always in the mindset of learning, I've always got something more I can learn. I've always got a better thing that I can figure out here. Then you'll always grow. And if you're always growing, then you're not dying. But as soon as you're the smartest one, you're dying. As soon as you're the best one, you're dying. And so with my team, that's how I deal with the communication and the listening aspect of that.
Yeah, to kind of summarize what you said, listening kind of shows people respect. It definitely builds relationships. When you listen properly, it increases knowledge, generates ideas, builds loyalty, helps others, and ultimately, if you listen, it helps you. So there's
Yes.
7 different things that listening does that just it has an impact in our lives. Now, how do you know if you're not listening? I'm going to give you 6 different things, and I'll let you self identify on which one your air typically is the go to. All right. So I'll tell you
Okay.
mine first. So that way there can be some humility in this. But the first air in listening is over talking. The second is not focusing. The third is mental fatigue. The fourth is stereotyping. The fifth is carrying personal or emotional baggage. And the sixth is being preoccupied with self. I will tell you, I worked really hard over this last year to be more focused in conversations. So I really feel like I'm way more focused than I ever have been because I try to take notes when I'm in conversations. I try to block out other distractions. So that used to be my biggest one. I would tell you my biggest one that I feel that I've moved into today is either over talking or stereotyping. I kind of jump to generalizations when people are talking, or I'll overtalk like in this segment of the show where I'm talking way too much.
Uh, well, mine is definitely the over talking piece. I actually put it on my voicemail when you call in and you're trying to get a hold of me. Is I'm sorry I missed your call. I really like to flip my lips, so I'm sad that I missed that call because that doesn't give me that chance. And there's definitely an over talking piece where you have to be able to shut up and listen. And that's my weakest spot, without a doubt, is the constant talk.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have different areas we can grow and get better in, and that's what this show's all about. So I got 2 more segments I want to go through, and we're going to go through these segments relatively quickly because we're going to be right at the 1 hour mark on this show in 1 minute. So I'm going to take us a little bit over because I think it's important. But if you understand the stuff that we've talked about so far, you build it into the way you communicate now from your team to partners. Okay, so take all this stuff, put it together, and now we're going to talk about how to communicate with partners. I've got 7 different steps to be able to communicate with partners that are beyond the things that we talked about. You need to take everything one step further in these 7 ideas. So the first one is number 1, don't take your partners for granted. Number 2, possess a make a difference mindset. Number 3, don't stay out of touch with them. Don't fall out of touch. Don't stay at a distance. Number 4, focus on common ground. Number 5, disc profile communication. Number 6, share what matters to you. And number 7, be an empowerer, not an emperor. So those are the 7 steps, 7 keys to communicating with vendors outside of just your normal team communications. Okay. So number 1, don't take them for granted. Jason, has there ever been a time in your life where you've taken a vendor for granted?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Especially when I was younger in my career and it felt like construction workers were like a dime a dozen. I think I burned through probably 20, 30 relationships and didn't even understand the importance of those relationships today had I maintained good relationships with those people.
Right.
You know, what about possess a make a difference mindset? How can you work? So you work with vendors with your construction company. They're people that service our business. How do you constantly focus on having a make a difference mindset with them?
So for me, it's sometimes as a vendor, and I've been on the side of being a vendor, right, for other people. Sometimes we just go, here's your scope of work, here's what I need you to do, go do it and send me a bill. Instead of maybe making that contact and asking, hey, how's your day doing? Are things going well? And then they'll be like, oh, a lot of times you start with that and they'll go, oh, are you needing something? It's like, no, I just want to see how it's going. And what it is, I've been doing better with giving those vendors a call and just going, how are things going? And that's what makes a difference. Treat them
And
like
that's
they're
really, I
people.
mean, the concept of staying in touch is so critical, right? Like, because a vendor is not somebody that you have a day to day conversation with. There's somebody that you may have a conversation with right now, and then 6 months from now, you need access to the relationship again, or a partner. You guys might be working really tight right now, but then you work on separate projects and you come back together. Or if you're talking about an investor, right? Somebody who invests in your business. That might not be an everyday interaction style communication, but if you fall out of touch with these people and don't know what's going on in their lives, you lose what we talked about at the very beginning, which is that connection. And so that's really why you have to focus on common ground, right? What are some different ways and strategies that you use to focus on common ground with your vendors?
So with me being in construction, I know the general idea of each one of these vendors and what they do and how they do it. And so to find common ground, a lot of times it's, hey, I used to try to do this. Like take a glass vendor, for example. I used to try to put these glass in and broke some of these. And man, I just really don't want to go that route anymore. And I'd really like to get somebody like you that can really help me out in this aspect to save me those extra headaches. Now I found common ground with them through what it is that they do on a regular basis and how I have made the mistakes, which puts them kind of in a position of, hey, I am the authority on this, and hey, I am a guy that can really be beneficial to you instead of, hey, I know how to do this and this is what I want you to do. And so it brings that common ground is we are now a team. Your strength is my weakness, and I need your strength in the midst of this.
Yeah, I try to look for like REI meetup groups and just different things that I'm doing or participating in, whether it's like a client of mine that might be doing a baseball game outing or whatever, and try to bring as many people together so that we have common experiences that I can focus on and talk about whenever I reconnect with people. And so that might be creating or cultivating that experience. It might be piggybacking on a partner's experience that I want to refer them and bring them into, or it might just be an experience that is already going on in the community that I'm attending that I bring those vendors into with me. And I try to stay connected and focus on those aspects, those events that I took them to or that I went with them to in order to have common ground with them to discuss things. I could do a whole show on disc profile communication. So that is a important step, learning to communicate with different personalities and personality types. Sometimes on our teams, we get to really understand and know people and how they communicate, but sometimes it's better if we can identify that quicker and at a distance from a vendor as we're bringing the relationship closer. So disc profile communication is something we could do a whole show about, Jason, and it's just we don't have time for it today. However, I think it is important that we do talk a little bit about share what matters most to you. I think it's important that we share with our vendors what matters most to us, right? So that they know whenever we're having conversation with them, if you need to have something done by a deadline and explaining to the vendor why it needs to be done by that deadline. I have a graduation party. I have, this that's going in. If I don't make March 15th, then we're going to miss our cutoff for getting the leasing traction that we're looking for on this product. Giving them the reason why you're doing things and why things matter to you, I think is so critical. What about you?
Yes, definitely. You can't really over communicate in that area. It's like when you're what 2 to 4 years old, the question why is always coming out of a 2 and 4 year old's mouth, right? Why? That doesn't ever leave us. We all want to know why it's so important, or why we should be doing this, or why we should be doing that. And the old phrase of because I said so doesn't work. It doesn't work with a vendor, doesn't work within a company. Yeah, you may be the authority, you may be the number one guy, you may be the boss and the owner, and you can't use that because I said so effectively. It has to be, here's what we're seeing and here's what we're doing and here's why this matters to us in this part. And when you're dealing with vendors and you're going, hey, this is kind of an emergency on our end, and I'm sorry, I know my emergency doesn't create an emergency for you, but I want to explain to you why this is so painful for me at the moment and why it's an emergency. And is there anything you can do to help me out during this time? I made the mistake. I messed up. But again, that's when you build that relationship with the vendor, and then they go, you know what? You've been good to me. I'll come and help take care of that. But you've got to give them a good reason, not just because I need you there.
Yeah, 1000%. And for you guys that are looking to acquire real estate, uh, this 7 steps are critical in the conversations to acquiring real estate with other potential partners that you're going to be buying from. If it's a wholesaler, a real estate agent, whoever that vendor is, don't take them for granted. Go out with the concept of adding value to their life. Have a make a difference mindset in their life. Don't fall out of touch with these people. Stay in constant contact with them. Focus on the common grounds that you do have, the events, the different things that you've been to or been a part of. Learn disc profile communication, which maybe I'll do a whole show on. Share what matters most to you. And then lastly, be an empowerer, not an emperor. You don't have to go out and be demanding and controlling and manipulative and because I said so, like Jason said. You can empower people so that they can understand the importance of the relationship with you to help you accomplish your goals. And so when I'm looking for people to empower, I just have a couple of steps that I follow. Number one, you have to evaluate your relationships. Do it up front, though. Don't evaluate the relationship way in the back end and then say, well, I should have known this about this person's weaknesses. Like, that's not fair to them. Okay? Do the evaluation up front. Model for them the behavior that you want them to have. If you want to be a kind person and you want them to be a kind person, model kindness. Do the modeling up front. Give them permission to succeed. Don't take the opportunity for them to succeed away from them. I don't know how many times I've worked with different people who try to put me in positions where this is a no-win situation. I can't spend any money, but I got to lease it by Thursday. Well, that's not going to happen. Then transfer authority to them. Yeah, I know it feels really weird, but if you're going to empower other people, at some point you got to give them the steering wheel. You got to let them drive the car. And it's okay. They've got the power, they've got the authority, and you've transferred it to them because you're there to serve. Then you edify them publicly. What? Wait, you tell everybody what great relationship you have with different vendors. You tell different people what great relationships you have with people. Yeah, Fred Maples is a great property manager for you. Please share it online. Let other people know that we're doing a good job for you. That will help solidify the vendor relationship with us. Vice versa, the same thing we do with our contractors and our vendors. We let other people know when we come across great people that we do business with. That's one of the reasons this show exists, is to have great people on this show for you. You've met a number of them through this show: Lee Fjord, Brian Schroeder, Jamie Frazier, a number of different people on this show, like Jason, for instance. Jason Hudson's a great person to get to know, guys. That's why I have him on the show. So make sure you share them with others and edify them publicly. And then supply them with feedback and release them. You don't have to hold on to your vendors. They don't have to be, they're not your list of people, okay? That's not the way it goes. Just because you found and met somebody doesn't make them yours, okay? You got to be able to release those vendors and let them work with other people as well. You're not their sole business, and so you have to realize that. You can't tie up every hour of their time. Okay, so that's how we communicate with vendors. We're going to formalize and finalize the show with how to communicate with potential investors, executive, and board members. Okay, Jason's reading the book right now, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Wilkes, and I'm sure Jocko would agree. The choices we make us. There are choices. We made them. Start from the premise of the choices you've made in your life and own them. You know, The second thing you do when you're communicating with an investor is you make the decision, then manage the decision. Jason, have you ever worked with people before, investors, different relationships, executives, team members, where they're trying to manage something they've never made a decision on?
Yes. Doesn't work very well.
It's impossible to operate.
No.
How do you behave when you're trying to manage something that's going on that you haven't even made a decision on? You can't. You don't know what
It's not
resources you have
possible.
available. You don't know what team you're supposed to utilize. They're like, make it so. I can't make it so. You haven't given me the authority or the resources to do so. So the same thing with your investor partners, executive decisions. Make sure you guys make the decision first and then manage that decision that was made. Don't come back later on and say, we made a different decision that was never actually made. You ever had that situation come up where people are like, no, we said this. And you're like, no, we have it in writing. We said this.
Yep. More than once.
So manage the actual decision that was made. Number 3, maintain the right attitude and don't try to regain it. I find that it's really difficult in investor relationships and executive meetings with friends and team members who you've been working years with. If you get a bad attitude, it takes forever to try to regain that attitude with everybody and get back in right positioning and all of that kind of stuff. Just maintain the right attitude in every situation. Don't come back and try to regain it later. You know that. Have you ever been in a situation where you probably said something you shouldn't have with people who were important to you that cost you money, Jason?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, me too. I think that anybody who has had any success in this world understands these principles. I'm not teaching today. I'm rebringing things that we already all know back to the forethought of our memory, so they're in the front part of our brain and we can actually have them on the tip of our tongue whenever we're going to make that next comment. Right? And then step number 4, when we're communicating with investors, executive, and board members, is to help others by adding value to their life. It is not about you. It is about the mission at hand when you're working with them. And so you have to make it less about yourself and more about the opportunity, less about yourself and more about serving them, less about yourself and more about the outcomes that you guys are trying to achieve together. And if you can do those things, guess where your communication is with those people? It's fantastic. So I don't have to tell you what to say to an investor. Go in with the right mindset. I don't have to tell you what to say to your vendors and your partners, guys. Go in with the right mindset. I don't have to tell you how to speak to your team. Go in with the right mindset. And ultimately, I don't have to tell you how to talk to yourself. Get your mind in the right position, and it starts with you. If you can get rid of the things that hold us back when we're talking to ourselves, you can get all the way here to having conversations with investors and board members and executives and have the success that you're looking for in your real estate investing career. Jason, any final thoughts on this concept of communication as we wrap up?
It is the bedrock of anybody who wants to be successful or anybody who actually wants to achieve anything in life. It is a need, a desire, and it's not optional.
Yeah. And communicate with everybody right now about what you're promoting and what you're trying to accomplish with your construction business.
So for me, the way I like to serve is by helping, especially real estate investors. I really like helping give you a good quality turn, flip, make ready that is going to allow somebody to come move into your place and go, man, I picked the best place. Look how nice it is, without gouging you on costs, right? There's always a cost. Costs have gone up. It's just the way it is. But to be able to present you a good quality product, but more than just a good quality product, the goal that I have is to be able to give you timelines to keep in contact with you as we go through the different projects we have going on, and to be in constant communication with you as the investor and me as your vendor on what is going on in your property, so that we can give you a good quality. So for a quick example, if we turn a unit for you that's a rental property, my goal is that you do not have to see my face in that unit for up to 18 months with anything that we had fixed prior to. we should not have to go back and redo.
That's great, Jason. Let's say that somebody wanted to communicate with you and learn more about your business and maybe request a bid or whatever. How do they do that with you?
So the best way to do that is you can either go to red-maples.com. I know that's our management company, but we also will have construction there as well. Or you can get a hold of me email. My email is jhudson@red-maples.com. And then you can reach out to either one of those two areas. Email is probably the best way to handle it. So you can email me and I will get back to you fairly quickly on those emails. I do try to keep up on those the best I can. So best way to communicate with me right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. I totally appreciate you being a part of the show today. And I mean, gosh, your insights are invaluable. So thank you for being a part of this conversation on communication.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nathan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. In that Renovation Nation, it's going to bring us to the end of another episode. You know, if you've been with me for any length of time, you know that I'm appreciative, I'm encouraged, and I get excited for you participating and being a part of the show, whether that's online, sharing, caring, putting comments in the comment section. And I'm humbled and appreciative of your guys' following online. So thank you very much for being a part of what we're doing here at Mind Renovation Nation. And thank you for joining us on the journey of real estate business growth. Remember, just like plants need the right environment, your mind needs the right conditions to build a life of passion and purpose. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, join the email list, and share this episode with a friend who's as passionate about real estate investing as you are. That will enter you into the Renovation Nation. You can head to www.nathanbushmba.com to subscribe to the email list. And I'll share this final thought with you. In our journey of mind renovation, it's about more than personal success. It's about values-based investing. Let's not be stewards of just our finances, but of our values and vision for a better future. Signing off from St. Louis, stay blessed, stay inspired, and remember, every day is a chance to renovate your nation. Thanks, guys.